Hello, beloved. It's me, James, and it's another opportunity for us to be together. Couple of housekeeping things I want to bring up to you before I start talking today. And those housekeeping things are these. First of all, there will be no moments or sacred readings in the month of June. It's a month of transition. I am leaving St. James as the pastor and moving on to Doolin Church as the pastor. And in the midst of that move, June is a busy packing, getting ready to move. So it's a good kind of buffer. The second thing is, if you watch these moments on the St. James website, sjumc.net/live, or you watch them recorded, in either case, they will not be reappearing in July. And that's because I will no longer be the pastor there. My successor may or may not continue this kind of content. And if they continue content, they'll do it in their own way, which is a good thing, because Alyssa will bring her own perspective. So it's important for you to know, in June, there won't be any moments. And after June, these moments, particularly on the St. James website, will no longer be me, and they may or may not continue under Alyssa's leadership. Just a heads up. I will probably restart these kinds of moments myself personally, and they'll be available in my personal Facebook feed, as well as on my YouTube channel for Infinitely Precious, which is youtube.com/@Infinitely Precious LLC. And those moments will probably still happen on Tuesday and Thursday. They just won't be here. So those were housekeeping things I thought were important for you to hear. Today I want to talk to you about perspectives. And the reason I want to talk about perspectives is because everyone has one. Everyone has a point of view, which really is a view from a certain point. If you are looking at a mountain from two different sides of the mountain looks like a whole different thing. If you're on a mesa or a plateau on the mountain, it may feel like you just are on flat ground. But someone who's at the foot of the mountain may look up and think of it completely differently. We all see the world through our own eyes. And the way we see the world, as much as we want to imagine we do so objectively, we don't. We all have a subjective point of view, us being the subject, looking out through these eyes. Our lives have been shaped by experiences we've had, training we've had, education we've had, the perspectives that were handed on to us from other people, parents, teachers, significant others. And those perspectives often shape the way, in fact, I would say not often, they always shape the way we see reality. It is the glass half full, glass half empty perspective. The truth is, both of those are correct. But each is a perspective. Each is a perspective. Now, there are some things when it comes to a point of view or a perspective that have no basis in factual reality. And those perspectives become very challenging for people who like to believe that they are coming from a point of factual reality. And sometimes we can't even agree on the facts. So the bottom line is, what do we do, particularly when we're trying to be in conversation with people who see the world radically differently than we do? And the truth is, it may or may not be an easy thing. It will probably never be an easy thing to do. When you engage with people who see the world differently, they may see the exact same object in a wholly different fashion. So all you can choose to do, you personally, is recognize, first of all, that you have a perspective, you have a point of view, a view from a specific point, and that is what you bring into a conversation. You may be able to suspend that point of view temporarily while you listen, particularly if you choose not to speak what you see to be the facts or your perspective, and instead simply ask a series of questions so that the other person can present their point of view, their perspective. But being honest about where you're coming from is a good place to be. You need to recognize that you bring a perspective, an opinion, a point of view that has been shaped by your life into every conversation you enter. Now, the other person may or may not recognize that about themselves. Self-awareness is not something that seems to be particularly catching in today's world. So that person may believe that their perspective is the perspective as opposed to a perspective, just one of many. So what do you do to enter into those conversations? How can you be in conversation with someone who sees the world differently than you? As I said, recognize your own. But the other thing is suspend your sense of needing to be right. If you want to be, it's probably not a true conversation, but because we bring a perspective, because we bring a point of view, we also bring an assumption, and that assumption is that our point of view is right, is correct. For whatever reason, we believe we're correct. Now, when you're in a conversation, the other person believes they're correct too. If you're both able to suspend that and simply listen to one another, then the possibility is there can be an exchange. But oftentimes, at least one party, and sometimes both parties, are unable to suspend their perceived need to be correct. And so in the midst of their perceived need to be correct, they will continue to argue against any perspective other than theirs. Now, at the bottom of all of that is if we are, as we are evolutionarily, part of a tribal understanding in the universe, each of us being part of a tribe and understanding that our survival depends on being a part of that tribe, we also believe that survival believes in adopting the tribal views. So if we are very conservative or very progressive, or if we're a member of a particular political party, no matter where you're from, you would adopt that point of view in part because you believe your survival depends on it. So when we get into these red-faced arguments with each other, often it's because we believe our survival depends on our point of view, that our tribe is right and they're all about survival. It's nowhere more clearly evident than in the American political landscape right now. People who believe that survival is dependent on certain choices being made and devaluing of other people. On the other side, people who have had trouble hearing the perspectives of others, struggling, and it's a constant back and forth. And depending on who you are, you may think I'm talking about one party or the other party in the way I even describe them. I have a perspective, I have a point of view, and mine tends to come out. I like to believe in subtle ways, but if we're being honest, probably not such subtle ways. The truth is, I bring my perspective to every conversation. One of those perspectives, as I've shared with you many times, is that you are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift that you are. And if you are that, then your perspective matters, even if we disagree, even if it's not based on fact, even if mine's not. Each of our perspectives matters. But the other side of that too is, if I'm a gift for just who I am, and if you're a gift for just who you are, I don't need my opinion or perspective to survive. And perhaps I can open up just enough to hear what you have to say. We tend to get caught up in self-fulfilling kinds of perspectives. I'm right, and therefore, no matter what happens, I'll find a way to justify it. The same action by someone else would not be justifiable, but the same action by someone who leads my group, my tribe, is. Can you see how messy? I'm sure you already knew. I'm perhaps speaking the obvious to those who are listening. So be aware that you come into every conversation and in every place in your life with a perspective. When you watch the news, when you watch television, when you consume social media, when you're in conversation with members of your family, members of the human race that you don't even know, everyone in that conversation, everyone who enters that comes from a point of view, a perspective. And they likely, whoever they are, and one of the days is you, believe that they are correct. In fact, they're probably fairly certain that they are. They've staked a lot on their being correct. So just be aware of that. If you can enter a conversation without the belief you have to change the other person's mind about something, that you simply want to hear them out, then chances are fairly good that you can have a civil conversation. It is also possible that if you feel that it is your job to convert them to your point of view, and they feel the same way about converting you to their point of view, it is probably not going to be pretty. That's why we get all these wonderful silos in which we live, where we only hang out with people who see the world that we are, the way we do. I want to encourage you, invite you to expand the way that you see the world. Be curious, not judgmental. To borrow a Ted Lassoism, be curious, not judgmental. Ask questions, listen. Realize that you bring a point of view and that you obviously feel it is valid. But try not to judge the other person based on where they're coming from. Even if they are judging you because you don't come from the same place. Be honest with each other. It's hard work. It is hard work. But all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, bring a certain point of view that's been shaped in our lives. And it becomes harder and harder to treat the other person as the infinitely precious, unconditionally loved gift that they are. It becomes harder. So, what can you do about it? Recognize yourself as a gift, a precious gift, an unconditionally loved gift. You bring something to every conversation. Recognize that. Your point of view is your point of view, as is the other person's. And as much as you want to be right, if all of our lives are about being right, then sometimes we won't be able to be with other people. And sometimes that's a choice you have to make. I can't be with you because this is a matter of life and death. But if it's not, is it possible to just listen to someone with a different point of view? As long as that does not violate your personhood or the personhood of people that you love, there is perfectly good reason to walk away when that's not true. It's a perfectly good reason to get angry if that is not true. But if you can listen, and if they can listen, perhaps we can learn to see our perspectives and build a better world. That's my invitation for today, my welcome for today. Remember, you are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you are, and I hope you'll be the gift that you are in today. Until the next time.